When Mr. Glenn Otterbosch hired Sammy Boone, she was 16 and so skinny that the whole of her beanpole body fit neatly inside the circle of shade cast by her hat. For 3 weeks, he'd had an ad in the Bozeman paper for a Wrangler, but only 2 guys had shown up. One smelled like he'd swum across a whiskey river before his truck fish-tailed to a dusty stop outside the lodge, and the other man was missing his left arm. Mr. Otterbosch looked away from the man with one arm and told him the job was already filled. He was planning to scale back on beef raising and go more toward the tourist trade, even though he'd promised his uncle Dex, as Dex breathed his last wheezes, that he would do no such thing. Every summer during his childhood, Mr. Otterbosch's schoolteacher parents had sent him to stay with Uncle Dex, a man who resembled a petrified log in both body and spirit. He had a face of knurled bark and knotholes for eyes, and a mouth sealed up tight around a burned-down Marlboro. He spoke rarely. His voice rasped up through the dark tubes of his craw only to issue a command or to mock his nervous, skinny nephew for being nervous and skinny. He liked to creep up on young Glenn and clang the dinner bell in his ear, showing yellow crocodile teeth when the boy jumped and twisted into the air. So Dex's bequest of all 40,000 acres to Mr. Otterbosch, announced when a faint breeze was still rattling through the doldrums of his tar-blackened lungs, was a deathbed confession that Dex loved no one, had no one to give his ranch to except a disliked nephew whose one point of redemption was his ability to sit a horse. It was true that Mr. Otterbosch rode well, and because he liked to ride more than anything else, he quit his job managing a condo building at a ski resort, loaded his gray mare, Sleepy Jean, into a trailer, and drove up to pay his last respects. By the time the first rain came and drilled Dex's ashes into the hard earth, Mr. Otterbosch had sold off most of the cattle and bought 24 new horses, a breeding stallion among them. He bought saddles and bridles, built a new barn with a double-sized stall for Sleepy Jean, expanded the lodge, and put in a bigger kitchen. When construction was underway on 10 guest cabins and a new bunkhouse, he fired the worst of the old wranglers and placed his ad. Sammy showed up 2 days after the man with one arm. She must have hitched out to the ranch, because when he caught sight of her, she was just a white dot walking up the dirt road from the highway. His first impulse when he saw she was only a kid was to send her away, but he was sympathetic toward the too skinny. Moreover, he thought the dudes who would be paying his future bills might be intrigued by a girl wrangler in a way they would not have been by a man with a pinned-up sleeve who tied knots with his teeth. Mr. Otterbosch maintained a shiny and very bristly mustache, and his fingers stole up to tug at it. "Can you shoot?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "How are you with a rope?" "All right." "And you ride good?" "Yep." He dropped a saddle and bridle in her arms and showed her a short-legged twist of buckskin, a bitch mare who had recently not only thrown Mr. Otterbosch but kicked him for good measure, leaving a boomerang-shaped bruise on his thigh. When Sammy pulled the cinch tight, the mare flattened her ears and lunged around, her square teeth biting the air until Sammy popped her on the cheek. The mare squealed and pointed her nose at the sky, then stood still. Sammy climbed up. The mare dropped her head, and Crow hopped off to the right. Sammy tugged the reins up once and drove with her seat and sent the mare through the gate into the home paddock. In 5 minutes, she had her going around like a show pony. "Hang on there a minute," Mr. Otterbosch said. He went and threw some tack on Sleepy Jean, rode her back to the paddock, and pulled open the gate for Sammy. "Let's try you without a fence. Head down the valley." Mr. Otterbosch pointed toward a horizon of dovetailing hills. The buckskin cow-kicked once and then rocketed off, with Sammy sitting up as straight as a flagpole. Her long braid of brown hair thumped against her back. Sleepy Jean was plenty fast, but Mr. Otterbosch kept her reined in to stay behind and observe. Sammy rode farther back on her hip than most women, giving her ride some roll and swagger. It was a prickly, gusty day, and the buckskin was really moving, but Sammy didn't even bother to reach up and tug her hat down the way Mr. Otterbosch did.